Hey guys, it's Alex from Board Game Co. and today we're doing another episode of Play This Not That. If you're new here in Play This Not That, I pick two games that have some degree of overlap, of similarity, of reasons why you might pick one over the other. I go briefly into those two games and how they play, and then I tell you which one I think is the better game and which one I think you should get. Now don't get me wrong, by no means does it mean that the loser is a bad game. I generally only play games that are well rated, well respected, and sometimes I even have both of the games in my collection. I just think one is better than the other. Now in today's episode we are doing Rum and Bones and Guards of Atlantis. These are both two MOBA style games. Now MOBA style games are like League of Legends or games like that you play online, where effectively you have a crew of heroes that are, you know, the main characters that you're upgrading, that you're leveling up, that you're using, that they feel powerful, and then you combine that with these waves of often called creeps in the games online. But these creeps, these minions that allow for wholesale slaughter of these small meaningless characters that just go along a path, so you can level up your heroes, and then slowly throughout the course of the game you eventually hit this critical mass where you can finally push your way into the enemy's camp and ultimately win the game. Now both of these games handle that online board game style to board game physical copy in drastically different ways, drastically different experiences. Rum and Bones is far more of a roll dice chucker, like, you know, you're just having fun. You're like, everything's about just power and do this and do that thing that's powerful and then jump across the ship, and it has this Ameritrash feel to it that's very much Ameritrash. And again, Ameritrash is not a negative term at all. It's a defining term, but it's very dice chucking and powers and all that. Versus Guards of Atlantis takes a much more Euro approach to this genre, which is interesting because the genre isn't Euro in a natural sense, but it takes that Euro approach and it tries to make it more calculated and more tactical and less luck-based. Now, as far as these games, I'll go over them very briefly, and this one I'm going to do a little differently than I do other Play This Not That's. I'm actually going to go over some of the cons, some of the pros of each of these two games, and why I like each of these two games in different ways, and then I'll follow that with my conclusion, and then eventually, of course, if you stick around to the end, I will let you know which one I'm keeping, which one gets Play This Not That, and which one, and whether I have the loser in my collection. Now, to start it off with Guards of Atlantis. Guards of Atlantis, the first reason why I like Guards of Atlantis more than Rum and Bones is it has more rewarding player upgrades. Now, what I mean by that is, like I said already, each game has heroes. Each game has these core characters that you're upgrading throughout the game, and the heroes in Guards of Atlantis, the way upgrading works is that you get these cards, and each time you upgrade, you get to choose between a card that will give you either a better or a new ability, and then the card you don't select gives you these like a little attribute upgrades, like it might upgrade your range or upgrade something like that. So every time you upgrade, you're choosing these branching paths, and by the time you're done with, I believe there's 5 levels, 5 tiers to upgrading, by the time you're done, you have unique abilities that are totally different depending on which trees you chose, combined with unique stats based on the opposite of what you actually picked for the abilities. And it's a very refined player upgrade system that I enjoy much more than Rum and Bones. In Rum and Bones, the upgrade system is you basically have 3 powers, and you can buy those powers with gold as you kill other characters, other minions or other heroes, and then you're basically, the 3 upgrades are just there. You can upgrade each upgrade. So there's 3 upgrades each hero has, and then each one can be upgraded a second time. So you ultimately have a total of 6 possible upgrades, but there's no real branching paths, there's no real trees. They're just kind of there, and it's a much more linear selection process. I drastically prefer the upgrade system in Guards of Atlantis. I find it more rewarding and more interesting. The second reason for Guards of Atlantis is that it is more tactical and less luck-based. Now, I already said this as a general principle of the two games and the way they handle things, but while I enjoy my Ameritrash, while I enjoy rolling dice, while I enjoy powers, I think I more so enjoy a refined style of gameplay. Now, the two are not at odds with each other. The two are not at odds with each other. I enjoy both of those, and I have both those types of games in my collection. But in terms of my preference, I prefer the less luck-based of Guards of Atlantis. I prefer the more tactical nature of it. And what I mean by that is, first of all, Guards of Atlantis has no dice whatsoever. In Rum and Bones, everything is dice. Everything is roll dice, see if you hit. Roll dice, see if you hit. Now, don't get me wrong, there is 100% strategy to Rum and Bones. There's 100% positioning and which character upgrade paths you're going to choose, and which cards you're going to play, and which cards you're going to save. There's 100% strategy. But whereas in Rum and Bones, it's very much Ameritrash and very much dice rolling, very much hoping for the best around the strategy you choose. Guards of Atlantis is far more tactical. The board positioning matters a lot more. The way every time you attack, every time you do something, it's much more predefined. You can sit there and say, well, I have these upgrades, I have these cards, and I'm going to play this card, and he won't be able to counter that card because he doesn't have the right shield defense value. You can sit there and much more tactically play it out, and I really appreciate that about Guards of Atlantis. And finally, Guards of Atlantis feels more MOBA-like. The third reason for why Guards of Atlantis I think is better than Rum and Bones is well, again, not saying which ones I play this, not that, but each of them have pros and cons. Guards of Atlantis feels more MOBA-like. Guards of Atlantis much more captures that feeling of going back and forth with these hordes and slowly upgrading your heroes until eventually you hit a critical mass and are able to push through. Rum and Bones does have the MOBA style going on. It definitely has heroes. It definitely has little minions on a preset path for heading around the ship and whatnot. But Guards of Atlantis, I think it captures the feel more to me of that slow power up and then eventually overheaving the enemy's positioning until you eventually come in for the win. And that's the third reason why I like Guards of Atlantis. Now, as far as Rum and Bones also has a bunch of reasons why I prefer that one over Guards of Atlantis. Now, first of all, and this is a big one for me, Rum and Bones is far more intuitive, which it has more rules, but the rules are far more intuitive, which leads to a better teaching experience. Guards of Atlantis, it kind of, you have to play, you hear the rules and you start playing it, and then eventually kind of all comes together, but it's not really intuitive. And the first and most obvious way that I mean by that is the minions don't really move. The minions are kind of locked in place, and then as you eventually overcome one area, one realm of the game, you just kind of reset in the next realm and restart it off, which doesn't really, it works, don't get me wrong, it 100% works and it works very well, but at the same time it's not intuitive. It doesn't come naturally what's going on in the game, and a lot of other small rules are also like that, are also not intuitive in the way they teach and the way they play. Rum and Bones has more rules to go over to a new player, but at the end of the day, it all meshes almost instantaneously. Past looking up maybe what a condition token does, something like that, once you learn the game, it's there, it's in your head, and it all makes sense. And that is a strong pro for teaching Rum and Bones to new players and pulling them in. In Guards of Atlantis, you kind of need to get through a round or two before it starts to really click, and that's a little bit of a strike against it. Secondly, in Rum and Bones has more varied map setups. Now, it doesn't have a huge degree of map variety, don't get me wrong, but whereas Guards of Atlantis effectively has 2 maps, but they're very similar, and they're really more to scale for player count, not so much for map variety. In Rum and Bones, because of the fact that each faction comes with its own ship, and different factions have different ship sizes, and there's, I think, if I recall correctly, there's 3 different sizes of ships, you can end up with multiple different configurations of the larger ships versus the smaller ships versus the smaller ships, largest versus medium. There's all these different configurations of how the ships face off against each other that lead to slightly different decisions you're going to have to make, and slightly different ways you're going to have to play the game, and that I like the more variety to the map setup, contrasted with Guards of Atlantis, where while I like the game a lot, Guards of Atlantis at the end of the day, you kind of just go through this one default map, and even the side lanes that it has, you really barely ever use those, or at least my group and I don't really use those. So it kind of feels a little more stale in terms of the board engagement and the way that plays out. And then finally, Rum and Bones, while Guards of Atlantis has more rewarding player upgrading, Rum and Bones has drastically more hero selection. So even though that upgrade tree itself might be more boring and a little more stale compared to Guards of Atlantis, the amount of heroes available, not necessarily the core game, to be clear, Rum and Bones has a significant amount of expansions going on for it. In the core game alone, because they both actually have a similar amount of heroes, but in terms of the expansions, Guards of Atlantis has like 1 expansion pack, and Rum and Bones has has, I might have 2, I have to double check. And Rum and Bones has a ton of expansion content. So you will never run out of heroes. I have boxes. I have Rum and Bones over here, but I also have it over here, and over here, and over here. I have boxes full of content for Rum and Bones, and tons of different heroes and decks for different teams. And the sheer amount of content that Rum and Bones offers is significantly more than Guards of Atlantis, almost to the point of being a negative. I mean, this is a lot of content, and it can make them pretty hard to set it up randomly without whatever. So it can actually border on a negative when you have too much of a good thing. In terms of play this, not that, which game is going to win, which one do I think is better at the end of the day, and that is going to go to Rum and Bones. Rum and Bones wins the play this, not that of these 2 games. If you're looking for a MOBA style game, which one would I recommend? I would recommend Rum and Bones first and foremost. And the reason for that is Guards of Atlantis, while, and I wasn't sure which one would win in this one, I'm weighing up all the aspects, because I really like the more tactical aspect of Guards of Atlantis. But at the end of the day, that almost ended up being a strike against it. Now what I mean by that is Guards is a more serious game, but it also relies too much on memory and tracking people's hands. Now both Rum and Bones and Guards of Atlantis have a lot going on in terms of abilities, and especially because of the fact that you can have unique heroes until you've learned those heroes, until you've really understood what all the heroes do. At the end of the day, you're relying on not just, you're so focused on trying to track all the stuff you have going on and your teammates have going on, that you also have to focus and rely on what your opponents have going on. Now in Rum and Bones, because of the fact that it's a bit more Ameritrashy, because of the fact that it's more of a dice fest, it's not as important. When your opponent kind of pulls your hero across the ship with his harpoon gun and then suddenly attacks him, even though you got hit, even though you got lost, it kind of fits in with the nature of the game of just being a giant fun dice rolling experience, and you're like, whatever, I got hit with an ability I didn't really know so much, no big deal. But Guards of Atlantis, by focusing on being more of a Euro tactical approach, kind of makes you want to know all those details. It kind of makes you want to remember every single card that each of your opponent's heroes has going on in their hand, in order so that you can play optimally, because a more tactical, less luck-based approach kind of drives home that idea of playing optimally. But it ends up being very hard to actually do that until and unless you know the game really well. To know each character really well, to know each character's strengths and the weaknesses and the way they play out, and then the specific cards and upgrades your opponent chose and what's available to them, it becomes much harder, and it ends up being a counter experience to what the game is trying to be. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy it. I enjoy both of these games very much, but at the end of the day, that aspect of trying to combine a tactical experience with gameplay that makes it a little harder to really do that, and it kind of ends up being this weird hybrid of the two, versus Rum and Bones simply embraces its gigantic, attacky, fun nature. And so at the end of the day, Rum and Bones is my winner in today's Play This, Not That. At the end of the day though, both of these games are in my collection. Both of these games are staying, and the reason I have both of these, and when I constantly preach choosing the best games and keeping the best of the best, the reason I have both of these is because despite being similar in the genre they fit into, as well as the feel they give, despite sharing those overall similarities, the reason they both managed to fit a face space in my collection is Rum and Bones plays best with 2 versus Guards of Atlantis plays best with 4, 6, or 8. So if you're looking for that dichotomy of a 2-player experience versus higher player counts, they end up fitting these different spots in my collection. And additionally, the fact that one's more of a dice chucker, one's more of a Euro strategy, at the end of the day, despite all the similarities, there's enough of a reason for me to own both, and they are both excellent games that I highly recommend. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Play This Not That. If you've played either of these games, if you've played both, let me know in the comments down below. I know Rum and Bones tends to be a little bit more well-known, a little bit more available. Guards of Atlantis, on the other hand, is a bit more, it's a bit harder to get your hands on. It's not a typical game you're gonna find at most game stores, but it's worth keeping an eye on this one, because they actually have a second Kickstarter coming out where they rebalanced and retweaked some heroes. They're gonna have some new miniatures, some new content, so this actually might end up going up a bit depending on how that goes out. But keep an eye on this one. Keep an eye out for the Kickstarter. I'm sure I'll link these videos or whatnot when it actually comes out. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know which ones you've played, which ones you like better, and why. You can subscribe to this video down below, ring the bell for notifications. You can like this video, comment, subscribe. As always, you can head on over to BoardGameCo.com to support the channel. You can head over there, buy some games, trade some games, sell us your games, all that good stuff. And until next time, I'm Alex. Have a good one.